Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. In the Old West, loyalty wasn't earned, it was bought. And the men who sold it, they were the deadliest outlaws. Now, before we get started on this epic ride into the past, we ask that you subscribe as a token of friendship before we begin our journey.
Imagine a man so feared, his very name sent shivers down spines. Meet liver-eating Johnson. In the rugged wilds of the American West, one man's legend stood above the rest. Liver-eating Johnson was not just a mountain man, but a figure of terror. After his wife was killed by Indians from the Crow tribe, Johnson embarked on a relentless quest for vengeance. It's said he would kill and eat the livers of his enemies, believing it gave him their strength. This dude was wild. Fact or myth, his reputation alone was enough to strike fear into the hearts of many.
What's something people don't know about Sam Bass, the notorious outlaw who became a legend? Born in Indiana, Bass turned to a life of crime in Texas, robbing trains and banks with unmatched cunning. His most famous heist? The Union Pacific train in 1877, netting $60,000. But justice caught up at Round Rock, shot down at 27, his legacy endures. Want more tales?
Am I the only one who didn't know about John Wesley Hardin, the Wild West's deadliest gunslinger? Born in 1853, Hardin claimed to have killed 42 men. A notorious figure, he was as swift with his gun as he was with a deck of cards. Hardin's life was a whirlwind of violence, gambling, and narrow escapes from the law. His story is a chilling testament to the ruthless era of the Wild West.
If your idea of a legendary outlaw is a smooth-talking bandit, you're thinking of the Sundance Kid. Harry Alonzo Longabaugh, better known as the Sundance Kid, was one of America's most notorious criminals. Partnering with Butch Cassidy, he led the Wild Bunch gang, robbing banks and trains across the Old West. His criminal exploits captured the public's imagination, but the law was hot on his trail. In 1908, he supposedly met his end in a shootout in Bolivia. But the mystery surrounding his death leaves room for speculation. Was he really killed, or did he manage to escape? The legend of the Sundance Kid still fascinates true crime enthusiasts today. Want more stories?
None could resist her charm, but Rose Dunn was more than just a pretty face. Born in 1878, Rose was just 15 when she joined the notorious Dalton gang. With a gun in her hand and love in her heart, she became a legend. During a fierce shootout, Rose's bravery saved her outlaw lover, George Newcomb. But was she a hero or a criminal mastermind? The line between love and lawlessness blurred in her tale. Don't believe women could be outlaws? Think again. Meet Belle Starr, the infamous bandit queen of the Wild West. Born Myra Maybelle Shirley in 1848, Belle Starr didn't just break the law. She shattered societal norms. Known for her connections with outlaw gangs like Jesse James's crew, Belle became a legend. She was arrested multiple times, but her charisma and cunning always kept her one step ahead. From horse theft to harboring felons, she did it all with flair. Tragically, her story ended in 1889 when she was ambushed and killed. But Belle's legacy lives on, cementing her place in outlaw history.
Meet Harry Wheeler, the sheriff they couldn't escape. Wheeler wasn't just any lawman, he was the sheriff of Cochise County and a captain of the Arizona Rangers. His legendary bravery and relentless pursuit of justice made him a true crime icon. Dive deeper into history's... If you love tales of outlaws and heists, then meet Bill Doolin, the Wild West's most cunning outlaw. Born in 1858, Doolin became a legend, orchestrating daring bank robberies and train heists. He was known for his cunning escapes and fearless attitude, but in 1896, his luck ran out. Tracked down by lawmen, Doolin met his end in a dramatic shootout. Want more stories?
Exposing the legend behind the infamy. I will show you how Dave Rudabaugh earned his ruthless reputation. Born in 1854, Dave Rudabaugh grew up to be one of the most infamous outlaws of the American Old West. Known for his violent temper and quick draw, he was a key figure in the Lincoln County War. But his notoriety didn't stop there. Rudabaugh became a notorious cattle rustler and stagecoach robber, evading lawmen at every turn. In a twist of fate, he met his end not in a shootout but in a brutal beheading by vigilantes in Mexico. His life was a whirlwind of crime and chaos, a true testament to the wild days of the American frontier.
None can escape the shadows of history, especially not Tom Horn. Tom Horn, a name that sends shivers down the spine. Known as a cowboy, a lawman, and a hired gun, Horn's life was a maze of mystery and danger. His knack for tracking and killing made him both a legend and a nightmare. In 1901, Horn was convicted of murdering 14-year-old Willie Nickel, a crime wrapped in controversy and intrigue. Was he a cold-blooded killer or a pawn in a larger scheme? Horn claimed innocence till the end, but the gallows awaited. His story remains one of the most debated in Wild West lore.
Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. Now they say, this saloon girl controlled a gang of killers. Meet the Wild West's notorious Fanny Porter. Fanny Porter ran a San Antonio brothel in the 1890s, but she wasn't just a businesswoman. She was a mastermind with an iron pimp hand. Her saloon became a hideout for infamous killers like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Fanny didn't just shelter outlaws. She controlled information, kept lawmen finished off, and never betrayed her guests. Her web of secrets kept her untouchable, even as bodies piled up around her. The darker side of the Wild West wasn't always found at the end of a gun. Sometimes it was behind a sly smile and a locked door. Think you know the Wild West? Think again. Born Martha Jane Canary, she was a frontierswoman, sharpshooter, and all-around mystery. She fought alongside Wild Bill Hickok and claimed to be his lover. But was it all true? Her life was filled with adventure, danger, and a fair share of tall tales. From fighting Native Americans to becoming a legend in her own right. Let's begin the weird and fascinating story of Tom Blackjack Ketchum, a man whose life was anything but ordinary. Born in 1863, Tom Ketchum wasn't your average outlaw. Ketchum became notorious for his string of daring train robberies in the late 1890s, which made headlines. But his downfall came in 1901, when he attempted one last heist that would seal his fate. Captured and sentenced to death, his execution was botched. He was decapitated because the executioner used a rope that was too long, making it one of the most infamous executions in history.
Meet Laura Bullion, the Bandit Queen. Laura Bullion, known as the Rose of the Wild Bunch, lived a life shrouded in mystery and danger. Partner to infamous outlaws, she robbed trains and banks, evading the law for years. Captured in 1901, her legacy remains one of the most captivating in Wild West history. I bet you didn't know the man behind Buffalo Bill was more sinister than fiction. Let's dive in. William Frederick Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill, wasn't just a showman. His gruesome acts of skinning his victims shocked the world. But did you know he was inspired by real-life serial killers? It's a tale more terrifying than anything Hollywood could dream up.
Why do some lawmen turn into the very criminals they're supposed to catch? Henry Newton Brown is a case like no other. Born in 1857, Brown started on the right side of the law. He served as a deputy marshal in Kansas, known for his sharp shooting skills, but in a twist of fate, he crossed over to the dark side. In 1884, Brown led a gang to rob a bank in Medicine Lodge, Kansas. The heist went horribly wrong, leading to a deadly shootout. Captured and lynched by an angry mob, Brown's story is a chilling reminder of how quickly heroes can become villains.
None of us are ready for the truth about Billy the Kid, but let's dive in. Born Henry McCarty in 1859, Billy the Kid was an outlaw who became a legend. But did you know he was also a folk hero? With a quick draw and a quicker mind, he escaped from jail not once, but twice. His life of crime, it began with a simple theft, but it quickly spiraled. At just 21, he was gunned down by Sheriff Pat Garrett. But tales of his daring deeds live on. Ever heard of Nat Love? America's first black cowboy. Born into slavery in 1854, Nat Love didn't just dream of freedom, he chased it. After emancipation, he became a top-notch cowboy, but life wasn't all cattle drives and rodeos. Love faced outlaw ambushes, gunfights, and even earned the nickname Deadwood Dick after a shooting contest. Watch out, ladies. His life was a Wild West story with a true crime twist. Subscribe for more.
You need to watch this if you love untold stories of resilience and defiance. Sitting Bull, the legendary Hunkpapa Lakota leader, defied the U.S. government and became a symbol of Native American resistance. He orchestrated the victory at Little Bighorn, a battle that stunned the nation. His courage and vision made him a beacon of hope for his people. Want to hear more about notorious figures in history?
Born in
Subscribe now.
1829, Geronimo was an Apache leader who fiercely defended his people's land against Mexican and American forces. His name struck fear into the hearts of enemies. But who was he really? More than just a warrior, he was a symbol of resistance and resilience. Captured, escaped, captured again. His life reads like a thrilling novel, but it was real. Discover the untold truths about this enigmatic figure. Subscribe now for more tales of notorious figures in history. If you think the Wild West was all about cowboys and saloons, think again. It was survival of the fittest. Luke Short, known as the last gunfighter, survived the untamed frontier with a quick draw and nerves of steel. Born in 1854, he faced down outlaws and lawmen alike, earning a reputation that echoed through history. In 1881, he even stood against the infamous Dodge City Gang and lived to tell the tale. Hey, history buffs! Ready to dive into the murky world of the Wild West's most notorious conman, Soapy Smith? Grab your saddle, because we're heading back to the late 1800s. A time rife with outlaws, gold rushes, and a man known for his unparalleled cunning. Soapy Smith, born Jefferson Randolph Smith II in 1860, was a master manipulator who earned his nickname through a deceptive yet simple scam. He'd set up a stand, wrap bars of soap in varying amounts of cash, and sell them, claiming every bar had money inside. Of course, he had accomplices in the crowd who'd win big, encouraging real customers to buy. Spoiler alert, most bars had no money. This was just the beginning. Soapy didn't just stop at small-time street scams. He moved to Denver, Colorado and established the infamous Soap Gang, a group of like-minded criminals. They ran rigged poker games, faked lotteries, and even manipulated elections. His gang had a unique knack for blending in, making it difficult for law enforcement to pin them down. But Denver wasn't enough. Soapy needed a bigger stage. Enter Skagway, Alaska, during the Klondike Gold Rush. Here, Soapy set up a fake telegraph office to send messages for miners desperate to contact loved ones. Little did they know the telegraph lines didn't even reach Skagway. A genius move, but morally bankrupt. Smith's reign of fraud eventually caught up with him. On July 8, 1898, he met his end in a shootout at Juneau Wharf. The Wild West lost one of its most cunning figures, but Soapy Smith's legacy as a master conman lives on. So what do you think? Would you have fallen for Soapy's tricks? Let me know in the comments.
The Wild West is full of legends and lore, but some stories remain shrouded in mystery. Today, I'm diving into the intriguing tale of Isom Dart, a black cowboy and outlaw whose story deserves to be told. Born around 1849, Isom Dart started his life as a slave in Arkansas. After the Civil War, he ventured west, eventually finding himself in the Colorado Territory. Dart was a skilled horseman and an expert cattle rustler, a talent that quickly caught the attention of the wrong people. In the late 1870s, Dart joined a notorious gang known as the Tip Galt Gang. They were infamous for their cattle rustling operations across Colorado and Wyoming. Dart's reputation as a cunning and elusive outlaw grew, but so did the dangers that came with it. Now here's where it gets interesting. Dart didn't just rustle cattle. He also worked as a bronco buster and a rodeo rider. His dual life made him a complex figure in Wild West history. But the law was never far behind. By the 1890s, Dart decided to go straight. He settled in Browns Park, a remote valley straddling the borders of Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. However, old habits die hard, and Dart couldn't quite shake his past. He continued to rustle cattle on the side. In 1900, Dart's luck ran out. He was ambushed and killed by Tom Horn, a notorious hired gunman. Horn claimed Dart was a rustler, but many believe Dart was set up by rival cattlemen wanting to erase him from history. Isom Dart's story is a reminder of the diverse and often untold narratives that shaped the American West. His life as a black cowboy and outlaw challenges the traditional images we hold of this era. Meet Squirrel Tooth Alice. In the wild, untamed West, where lawlessness reigned and legends were born, one name stands out: Squirrel Tooth Alice. But who was she? Was she a mere gold digger, or something far more intriguing? Born as Mary Elizabeth Haley in Belton, Texas, she earned her peculiar nickname from her distinctive teeth. Haley had a difficult childhood. The family lost its fortune during the Civil War. In 1864, Comanche Native Americans raided the Haley farm in Texas and took young Haley captive. She remained a captive until 1867, when her parents paid a ransom for her release. From this point forward, Haley was a marked woman. But it wasn't her smile that captured the hearts and wallets of many a cowboy. Alice was a savvy businesswoman, a cunning gambler, and a mesmerizing dancer. She knew how to navigate the male-dominated world of saloons and mining towns with a skill few could match. Did she really manipulate the men around her, or was she simply using the limited tools at her disposal to survive? The lines blur between victim and villain. What drove her to the edge of society? How did she rise amidst the chaos of the gold rush era? These are the questions that make Squirrel Tooth Alice one of history's most enigmatic figures.
Hello, true crime fans. Today I'm diving into one of the most bizarre tales in outlaw history. Ever heard of Big-Nosed George? Well, let me introduce you to the outlaw who ended up as a pair of shoes. Big-Nosed George Parrott was a notorious bandit in the late 1800s, primarily known for robbing trains and stagecoaches across Wyoming and Montana. His criminal exploits were daring, but his downfall was even more extraordinary. In 1878, George and his gang attempted to derail a train, but their plan was foiled by vigilant lawmen. After a daring chase, George was captured in 1880. His trial was swift, and he was sentenced to hang. However, George had other plans. He tried to escape, but was caught and lynched by a mob of angry townspeople. Now, here's where the story takes a strange turn. Dr. John Osborne, a local physician, took possession of George's body for medical research. In a twist of macabre ingenuity, Osborne had George's skin tanned and made into a pair of shoes. Yes, you heard that right, shoes. These shoes, along with a medical bag made from George's skin, are still on display at the Carbon County Museum in Rawlins, Wyoming. A grim reminder of a criminal turned footwear. If you found this...
Hey there, history buffs. Today I'm going to take you back to a time when the United States was torn apart by the Civil War. But this isn't your typical war story. Today we're diving into the life of one of the Civil War's most towering enigmas. Literally. Meet Big Pat Bain, the tallest soldier to ever stand on a battlefield. Born in 1840, Patrick O'Bain came from an Irish immigrant family in Pennsylvania. By the time he was 21, he had already stood out, quite literally, standing a jaw-dropping 7 feet 8 inches tall. Imagine that. At a time when the average height was around 5.5 feet. This giant of a man was destined to be noticed. In 1861, when the Civil War broke out, Big Pat joined the Union Army. He became a part of the 155th Pennsylvania Infantry. His height alone made him a spectacle, often causing enemies and allies alike to stop and stare. But what's even more fascinating is how he used his height to his advantage. Pat would often be the first to see approaching troops and signal to his comrades. In a war where information was power, this was invaluable. But did his height come at a cost? Some say it made him an easy target. Yet records show he survived the war without a major injury. How did he manage this? Was it pure luck, or did his towering presence intimidate even the bravest soldiers? Big Pat Bain's life after the war is equally shrouded in mystery. He returned to Pennsylvania, where he lived a relatively quiet life. Yet stories of his exploits continue to grow. Some say he became a local legend, while others believe he used his imposing stature for less honorable ventures. What do you think? Could there be more to Big Pat Bain's story that history has yet to uncover? Subscribe for more videos on notorious figures in history. Until next time, cheers.
Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. In the Old West, loyalty wasn't earned, it was bought. And the men who sold it, they were the deadliest gunslingers of them all. Now, before we get started on this dark ride into the past, we ask that you subscribe as a token of friendship before we begin our journey. Today we ride into the brutal world of mercenaries of the Wild West, guns for hire, who sold their aim to the highest bidder. First up, Tom Horn, a former scout turned hired gun for cattle barons. Horn earned a reputation for long-range kills with his Winchester rifle. That boy was lit. He was paid up to $500 per job. He took out suspected rustlers without trial, often striking from ambush. Horn's cool precision made him feared, and eventually hanged for a killing he may not have committed. Ain't that a bitch? Next, Clay Allison, the gentleman gunfighter. He dressed well, smiled often, and killed more than 20 men. He was a brutal gunslinger, and Killer Allison's loyalty could be bought, but his temper was free. One insult could end in with his opponent in a coffin before supper. To friends, he was charming. To enemies, unpredictable death on horseback. And then there was Killin' Jim Miller, Deacon Jim. He never cursed, never drank, and killed more men than most outlaws. A devout churchgoer who carried a shotgun under his black frock coat. Miller charged $150 to $2,000 per body. Cold, silent, nor deadly, until vigilantes finally strung him up from a tree where he dangled for days without trial. In the Old West, a man's word was worth the price of a bullet, and these mercenaries made a fortune cashing in on bodies. Which one would you hire or fear? Let us know in the comments.
The year was 1830. America, a young nation boasting of liberty and justice for all, committed an act of unparalleled betrayal against its native inhabitants. The Indian Removal Act, a stain on the fabric of American history, stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of rights and the seductive allure of power. This act, driven by greed and prejudice, resulted in the forced relocation of tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands. It was a period of unimaginable suffering, a time when the very foundations of human decency crumbled under the weight of political ambition and racial prejudice. At the heart of this tragedy stood Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. Known for his fiery temper and unyielding resolve, Jackson was a complex figure in American history. A hero to many, Jackson embodied the spirit of westward expansion. He was celebrated as a champion of the common man, a defender of the frontier spirit. But his vision of a nation stretching from coast to coast came at a terrible price: the expulsion of Native Americans from their homes. This vision was not just a policy, but a deeply held belief. Jackson saw Native Americans as an obstacle, a barrier to the progress of white settlers. To him, their removal was a necessary step in the march of civilization. His unwavering belief in the superiority of the white man fueled his determination to remove Native Americans, by force if necessary, to lands west of the Mississippi River. This belief was rooted in a sense of manifest destiny. The Indian Removal Act was his weapon, a legal bludgeon to shatter the lives and dreams of countless innocent people. It was a law that sanctioned the forced migration of entire communities. Jackson disregarded treaties, ignored pleas for justice, and silenced any voice that dared challenge his vision. His actions were met with resistance, but he remained undeterred. He saw himself as a benevolent father figure guiding the Native Americans towards a better future. In his mind, he was offering them salvation. But his paternalism was a cruel illusion, masking a policy of ethnic cleansing that would forever scar the American conscience. The Trail of Tears remains a dark chapter in American history, a testament to the suffering inflicted by Jackson's policies. Among those who dared to resist Jackson's tyranny was John Ross, the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. A man of remarkable resilience and unwavering courage, Ross dedicated his life to defending the rights of his people. He was not just a leader, but a symbol of hope and resistance for the Cherokee. He understood the grave danger posed by Jackson's removal policy, a policy that threatened to wipe out the Cherokee way of life. The stakes were incredibly high, and the future of an entire nation hung in the balance. Ross, fluent in English and well-versed in the intricacies of American law, chose the path of diplomacy and legal action. He believed that through the courts and Congress, justice could be achieved. He traveled to Washington, petitioning Congress and pleading with Jackson himself to reconsider the devastating policy. His efforts were tireless, and his determination unyielding. He argued that the Cherokee had adopted the ways of the white man, embracing education, agriculture, and even slavery. They had made significant strides in integrating these practices into their society. They had their own written constitution, their own newspaper, and their own system of government, modeled after the United States. These institutions were a testament to their adaptability and resilience. They were, by all measures, a civilized nation, deserving of the same rights and protections afforded to any other American citizen. Their fight was not just for survival, but for recognition and respect. The Cherokee Nation, under Ross's leadership, took their case to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States. In a landmark ruling in the case of 1832, Chief Justice John Marshall sided with the Cherokee. He declared that the Cherokee Nation was a distinct political community with sovereign rights within its own territory. Marshall's ruling was a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of the law. It seemed that justice had prevailed, that the Cherokee had won a resounding victory against the tyranny of the Jackson administration. But their hopes were short-lived. Jackson, enraged by the Supreme Court's decision, famously retorted, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." With those words, Jackson effectively nullified the Supreme Court's ruling, choosing instead to side with the state of Georgia, which was eager to seize Cherokee land. The voice of expediency, Lewis Cass, and the propaganda of removal. The Jackson administration found a willing accomplice in Lewis Cass, the Secretary of War. Cass was more than just a government official. He was a fervent believer in the doctrine of manifest destiny. Cass, a staunch advocate for westward expansion, became the chief architect and defender of the Indian removal policy. His vision of America was one of unbounded growth, where the nation's destiny was to stretch from coast to coast. A master of propaganda, Cass skillfully manipulated public opinion, painting a picture of Native Americans as savages, an impediment to the progress of civilization. He used every tool at his disposal, from speeches to newspaper articles, to spread his message. He argued that removal was not only necessary, but also beneficial for the Native Americans themselves, claiming that it would shield them from the corrupting influences of white society. This paternalistic view masked the true intent of his policies. Cass's words resonated with a public eager to believe in the righteousness of their nation's expansion. His rhetoric provided a comforting narrative that justified their desires for land and resources. He provided the moral justification for an inherently immoral act, transforming a blatant land grab into an act of humanitarian intervention. This narrative was crucial in gaining public support for the removal policies. Through his speeches, writings, and policies, Cass helped to create an environment where the forced expulsion of thousands of Native Americans could be seen as a necessary evil, even a righteous act. His influence was profound and lasting, shaping the course of American history. The Trail of Tears, a journey of despair. In the spring of 1838, the inevitable happened. The United States Army, under the command of General Winfield Scott, began the forced removal of the Cherokee people from their ancestral lands. Over 16,000 Cherokee men, women and children were rounded up like cattle and herded into internment camps. Conditions in these camps were deplorable, with inadequate food, shelter and medical care. Many died from disease and starvation, their pleas for mercy ignored. From these holding pens they were forced to march westward over 1,000 miles to the designated Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. This forced exodus, etched in history as the Trail of Tears, became a symbol of the cruelty and inhumanity of Indian removal. The unhealed wound, the enduring legacy of removal. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the subsequent Trail of Tears represent a dark chapter in American history. The forced removal of the Cherokee and other Native American tribes from their ancestral lands left an unhealed wound, a legacy of pain and injustice that continues to haunt the nation. The consequences of this act are still felt today, in the shattered remnants of once thriving cultures, in the poverty and despair that plague many Native American communities, and in the ongoing struggle for recognition and sovereignty. The story of the Indian Removal Act is a stark reminder of the human cost of prejudice, greed, and the abuse of power. It is a story that demands to be remembered, not to wallow in guilt or shame, but to learn from the mistakes of the past and to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. Welcome, friends, to a tale of the Wild West, where the whiskey flowed like water and the sound of gunshots echoed through the saloons. Today we're stepping into the dimly lit, sawdust-covered world of the honky-tonk. We'll meet 6 infamous figures who live by their own code, written in bullet lead and whiskey fumes. Our first tale takes us deep into Texas, where the legend of John Wesley Hardin was born. Texas in the 19th century was a wild and untamed land, a place where the law was often just a suggestion, and survival depended on your wits and your gun. Hardin wasn't just a tough guy. He was considered by many to be the deadliest gunfighter who ever lived. Born in 1853, he grew up in a time and place where violence was a way of life. By the age of 15, he had already killed his first man. They say he killed over 40 men, and while the exact number is debated, one thing's for sure: Hardin was quicker on the draw than a prairie rattler. His reputation spread far and wide, making him both feared and respected. However, he was a mean old drunk, a brooding presence in every saloon he entered. His temper was as quick as his draw, and he didn't need much of an excuse to use his gun. One story claims he shot a man dead just for snoring too loud in a hotel room next to him. Such was the unpredictable and dangerous nature of Hardin. But Hardin wasn't just a cold-blooded killer, he was also a cunning outlaw, always one step ahead of the law. His ability to evade capture became legendary. He was eventually captured and spent 17 years in prison. During his time behind bars, he studied law and even wrote an autobiography reflecting on his violent past. On a hot August night in 1895, John Wesley Hardin's luck finally ran out. He was shot in the back of the head while playing dice in a saloon in El Paso. Thus ended the life of one of the most notorious figures of the Old West, a man whose name still echoes through the annals of history. Now let's mosey on down to Tombstone, Arizona, a town synonymous with gunfights and gambling dens. It's here we meet Big Nose Kate, a woman who could outdrink, outgamble and outfight most of the cowboys in town. Born Mary Catherine Horney, she immigrated to America from Hungary and quickly learned that survival in the Wild West meant playing by your own rules. She wasn't afraid of any man, least of all the law. She ran scams, stole when she needed to, and even got into her fair share of shootouts. Saloons were her domain. She worked in them, drank in them, and knew all their secrets. She lived life on her own terms, and in a world dominated by men, she carved out her own legend. Our journey through the Wild West underbelly takes us next to Texas, where we meet Ben Thompson, a man they called the gentleman gunfighter. He was known for his sharp wit, his impeccable manners, and his deadly accuracy with a pistol. Thompson ran a string of saloons, but these weren't just places to wet your whistle. He killed men over card games, gunned down rivals in broad daylight, and ruled his saloon empire with an iron fist. However, Thompson's luck, like that of many a gambler, eventually ran out. On a fateful night in 1884, he was gunned down in a San Antonio saloon, betrayed by those he considered friends. Her name was Lottie Dino, and she was a legend in the saloons and gambling halls of the Wild West. Lottie wasn't your typical frontier woman. She was known for her beauty, her charm, and her impeccable southern manners. She pretended to be a wealthy southern belle, using her charm and wit to disarm her opponents at the card table. Little did they know she was a card sharp of the highest caliber. She travelled from town to town, winning fortunes at poker and leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty wallets in her wake. Lottie Dino's story is a testament to the power of reinvention, of creating your own persona in a world that tries to define you. Our next tale takes us to the darker side of the honky-tonk, where we meet Dave Rudebour, a man whose life was a tangled web of crime, violence, and of course cards. Born in 1840, Rudebour's early years were marked by hardship and a relentless pursuit of survival. He quickly learned that the quickest way to make a buck was through less than honest means. Rudebour wasn't a flashy gunfighter or a charming gambler. He was a hardened criminal, a thief, and a killer who haunted the saloons and back alleys of the Wild West. His reputation was built not on charisma, but on fear and ruthlessness. He was a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. He was a MasterCard sharp, known for his lightning-fast hands and his ability to cheat without even blinking an eye. His skills at the card table were legendary, and many an unsuspecting gambler found themselves penniless after a night playing against him. Rudebour was a mentor to the infamous Billy the Kid, teaching him the tricks of the cheating trade. Their partnership was one of mutual benefit, with Rudebour gaining a loyal accomplice and Billy the Kid learning the dark arts of deception and survival. But his luck, as it always does in these stories, eventually ran out. Despite his cunning and skill, the lawless lifestyle caught up with him. His notoriety made him a target, and he found himself constantly on the run. He was caught stealing in Mexico and met a particularly gruesome end, beheaded, his head placed on a spike as a warning to other would-be outlaws. His death was a stark reminder of the brutal justice that awaited those who lived by the sword in the unforgiving landscape of the Wild West. This is the story of Rowdy Joe Lowe, a saloon owner with a hair-trigger temper and a fondness for other men's wives. Joe was known far and wide, not just for his saloon, but for his fiery personality and his penchant for stirring up trouble. His reputation preceded him, and it was said that he could go from calm to furious in the blink of an eye. Joe ran a popular establishment, a place where cowboys and miners came to blow off steam, drink their weight in whiskey, and maybe get into a little trouble. The saloon was always bustling, filled with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional brawl. It was a place where men came to forget their troubles and indulge in the wild side of life. But Joe wasn't content with just running a saloon. He was a man who lived life on his own terms, consequences be damned. He had a notorious reputation for his affairs with married women, which only added fuel to the fire of his already tumultuous life. Joe thrived on the chaos and seemed to invite trouble wherever he went. One fateful night, the saloon was packed, the air thick with tension. The usual rowdiness was overshadowed by an uneasy feeling that something was about to happen. The patrons could sense the storm brewing, and all eyes were on Joe, waiting to see what would unfold. Whispers of the love triangle had spread through the town, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before things boiled over. The gossip had reached a fever pitch, and the tension in the air was palpable. People whispered in hushed tones, speculating about the inevitable confrontation. When the smoke cleared, Joe lay dead, another victim of his own reckless heart. His fiery temper and reckless ways had finally caught up with him, leaving a legacy of chaos and a cautionary tale for those who dared to live life on the edge. Well, folks, there you have it. 6 tales of the Wild West, 6 souls who lived and died in the flickering gaslight of the honky-tonk. Their stories may be over, but their legend lives on, a reminder of a time when life was cheap, love was fleeting, and the only sure thing was the bottom of a whiskey glass. If you enjoy... Emiliano Zapata, a name whispered with respect, a symbol of standing up for what's right. Born in 1879 in the small village of Ananeculco, Zapata grew up witnessing the struggles of the poor and the injustices they faced. His early life was marked by a deep sense of empathy for the oppressed, which would later fuel his revolutionary spirit. He's remembered as a hero who fought for the poor and oppressed. His leadership during the Mexican Revolution made him a beacon of hope for many. Zapata's vision was clear: land and liberty for the peasants who had been exploited for generations. But every hero has a dark side. Zapata's story isn't just about freedom, it's also about the harsh realities of war and the difficult choices that come with it. His commitment to his cause sometimes led to ruthless actions that would stain his legacy. It's also about cruelty, a reminder of the terrible price of change. The battles fought were not just against the oppressors, but also against the very fabric of society that resisted change. The revolution was a time of great turmoil and suffering. This is the story of the bloodstains on the flag of revolution. The sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the bloodshed that marked the path to a new Mexico. Each stain tells a story of bravery, but also of pain and loss. This is the truth behind the legend, a truth that is often overshadowed by the myth. Zapata's legacy is complex, filled with both noble intentions and controversial actions. Many people know the basics of Zapata's revolution. They know he was a champion of land reform, advocating for the redistribution of land to the peasants. His famous slogan, Tierra y Libertad, land and liberty, became a rallying cry for the oppressed. They know he fought for land reform and always stood up for the peasants. His dedication to their cause was unwavering, and he inspired many to join the fight for justice and equality. But few dare to look into the darkness that clings to his memory. The decisions he made, the alliances he formed, and the enemies he created all contributed to a legacy that is as troubling as it is inspiring. The truth, as always, is much more complicated, much more disturbing. To truly understand Zapata, one must delve into the complexities of his life and the era he lived in. To understand Zapata, we have to face the violence, the betrayals, and the harsh reality of revolution. Only then can we appreciate the full scope of his impact and the enduring legacy he left behind. Imagine Mexico in the early 1900s. A land of extremes, where the gap between the rich and the poor was as vast as the deserts that stretched across the country. The few were rich, living in opulent estates, while most people lived in crushing poverty, struggling to survive each day. This was the world Emiliano Zapata was born into, a world where the cries of the oppressed echoed through the valleys and mountains. He saw the injustice firsthand, the way his people were taken advantage of by the powerful landowners who controlled their lives. He felt the simmering anger of a nation ready to explode, a nation that had endured too much for too long. The Mexican Revolution erupted in 1910, a seismic event that would change the course of the country's history forever. It was a firestorm fueled by decades of oppression, a collective outcry for justice and equality. The people, tired of broken promises and relentless exploitation, took up arms to fight for their rights. Zapata, a natural leader with an unyielding spirit, rose from the chaos, becoming a beacon of hope for the oppressed. He rallied the peasants with a simple, powerful cry: "Tierra y libertad," land and liberty. These words ignited a movement. It was a call to action, a promise of a better future where everyone could live with dignity and freedom. But the road to that future would be paved with blood, sacrifice, and an unwavering determination to achieve true justice. Zapata wasn't a man who did things halfway. He was a man of action, driven by an unshakable belief in his cause. But his methods were often brutal, his idea of justice unforgiving. He demanded complete loyalty, and his enemies knew no mercy. Under his command, the Liberation Army of the South became a powerful force. They were farmers and workers turned soldiers. They fought with the fierceness of men defending their homes, their families, their very right to exist. But as the revolution raged on, a darkness crept into their hearts. The line between fighting for freedom and being cruel became blurred. War, by its very nature, is savage. The Mexican Revolution was no different. Zapata's forces, though fighting for a just cause, committed their share of horrors. Villages were destroyed, innocent people caught in the crossfire. One particularly gruesome event, the massacre at China Mecca, forever stained Zapata's legacy. In a strategic move, his forces killed hundreds, their pleas for mercy drowned out by gunfire. Whether Zapata himself ordered the massacre is still debated, but one thing is certain: the blood of innocent people soaked into the soil, a grim reminder of the revolution's cost. Revolutions often destroy the very people who lead them. Zapata, despite his ruthlessness, was not immune to betrayal. He had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. He had made enemies, powerful men who feared his influence. In 1919, Zapata received an invitation to meet with Jesus Guajardo, a general who pledged loyalty to his cause. It was a trap. As Zapata stepped into the courtyard of the Hacienda de Chinameca, gunfire exploded. The revolutionary leader, betrayed by one of his own, fell, his body riddled with bullets. Emiliano Zapata's death sent shockwaves through Mexico. The news of his assassination spread like wildfire, leaving a nation in mourning and disbelief. The man who had dared to challenge the powerful, who had ignited the flames of revolution, was gone. His voice, once a beacon of hope for the oppressed, was silenced forever. But his death, much like his life, was controversial. Questions lingered about the circumstances, and many believed he was betrayed by those he trusted. He became a martyr, his image romanticized, his brutality often forgotten. Statues and murals were erected in his honor, immortalizing him as a symbol of resistance. Zapata's revolution ultimately achieved many of its goals. The land he fought so fiercely for was redistributed, giving hope to countless peasants. Land reform was enacted, the grip of the wealthy elite loosened. The vast estates of the rich were broken up, and the land was given back to the people. But the cost was staggering: hundreds of thousands dead, countless lives shattered. The revolution left a trail of blood and tears across the nation. The legacy of Emiliano Zapata remains a complex tapestry woven with threads of heroism and brutality. His actions, both noble and ruthless, continue to be debated. He was a product of his time, a man shaped by the violence he sought to overthrow. His story is a reminder of the high price of change and the enduring struggle for justice. Zapata's story is just one of many. History is filled with figures who walk the line between good and evil, visionaries whose paths to change were paved with blood. Their stories, often shrouded in myth and misconception, beckon us to delve deeper, to confront the complexities of the human condition. Who were these individuals? What drove them to such extremes? Were they monsters or saviors? To understand their motivations, their actions, is to understand the forces that have shaped our world. It's a journey into the darkest corners of human nature, a quest for truth that challenges our preconceived notions. Are you intrigued by the enigma of Emiliano Zapata? Do you find yourself drawn to the shadows of history, the stories that challenge and disturb? Then join us as we delve deeper into the lives of history's most notorious figures. Subscribe and embark on a journey of discovery. Also, if you enjoyed this content and want to be a champion of our channel, pick up a cool Notorious Figures hoodie or t-shirt for yourself or for a gift. You can now shop our clothing store in the video description below. Until next time, cheers!